and welcome to Energy Top Up. It's your resilience building show to boost your mental and emotional fitness. And this week, we are looking at the value of pressing pause. Now, usually we run around doing so many things, and multitasking is indeed a skill, but there can be a lot gained if you just take a moment to take that pause, reflect, reframe, and perhaps even refocus before resuming again. We're your hosts and trainers. I'm Dr. Audrey Tang, a chartered psychologist, and with me is the amazing award-winning parent and family coach, Sharon Lawton.
Hello and welcome everybody. Now let's face it, work, life, parenting, relationships, it's all exhausting. But to enjoy it, we need to think about our own well-being, and that means pressing the pause button sometimes. Now, looking after ourselves, having a little bit of me time is essential if we are to look after ourselves and be the best version of ourselves that we can be. Because if we neglect ourselves, we can become exhausted, stressed, impatient, and really resentful of all of the demands that are made on us from other people in everyday life. Now, I accept that me time or topping up your emotional tank is as individual as we are. Some of us like that reflective, quieter activities, what we might call yin, and others of us prefer more active things like socialising and sports, what we might call yang activities. Now, whatever your preference, we have something for you this week, don't we, Audrey?
We do. It's a great week this week because we really want you to think about self-compassion and self-care. But exactly as Sharon says, we all have different preferences, but there will be something in this show for you. So let's kick off with your warm-up, which is a blend of the yin and the yang, a blend of that soothing oxytocin through relaxation, but also that mix of that hit of dopamine just to get your adrenaline pumping. This is your personal showreel visualization. What I'd like you to do is just take a moment to center yourself and breathe just for a second. So breathe in through the nose, hold for a moment, and out through the mouth. And as you do this, I want you to think of one of your greatest successes, whenever it was, that great success. And as you get that image in your mind, I'd like you to even use your hand to do this, but swipe upwards and really make those colors more vibrant, make the sounds louder, make the smells even stronger. So really swipe that energy up and enjoy that moment, enjoy that success. And now what I'd like you to do is think about a success that you've had in the past year, a little bit more recent. So think about that success, really picture it. What were you doing? What were you wearing? Think about that, enjoy it for a moment and swipe that up as well. See, the colors become more vibrant, the sounds, the smells, everything about that experience is really bright in front of you. Enjoy that for a moment. And now I'd like you to think of a success that you had in the past week. Now, this doesn't need to be a massive success, but just something that made you feel really good. Perhaps you learned how to use an online social meeting platform for the first time. Perhaps you learned a new skill, whatever that was. Just think about it, get that memory, and then swipe it up again. So you've really got that moment and enjoy it and feel proud of yourself for doing it. And what I love about the personal showreel is that it reminds us that whilst we might have successes in the past, we can succeed every single moment of the day, and it doesn't need to be a massive thing. And that personal showreel is there to partly relax you, but partly remind you that actually you're probably doing okay, even better than okay. So on that note, I'm going to pass you back to Sharon for our first exercise.
Thanks, Audrey. One of my favourites, the showreel. Really, really helpful activity. Now, we're talking a lot about looking after ourselves and well-being. So I'm going to give you sort of like a visual representation of how that works and why it's really important. So if you imagine yourself as this sort of jug, if you like, and when our well-being is topped up and our emotional tank is topped up, it's like our little jug is full. Let's imagine that this glass are all the people, all the things, all the activities that we do to give and support to others. And every day in our work life, in our personal relationships, in our family life, with our colleagues, everything that we're doing, we're giving out. And if we don't look after ourselves, if we don't top ourselves up eventually, what can happen is that we are running on empty. Now, just like you look after your car and you top your fuel tank up to make sure your car runs effectively and efficiently, we need to do the same with ourselves to top ourselves up so that we can give back to others. So, what I'm going to suggest that we think about is to think about ourselves a little bit like our spices wheel here. Now, if we're going to look after ourselves, top ourselves up emotionally, or nurture ourselves, it's not selfish. It's something that we really need to be doing regularly. So, as I said at the top of the show, so that we can be the best version of ourselves. Now, as you can see here, there are 6 segments on my nurturing self-care wheel. We have spiritually, that's anything that feeds the soul. Physically, makes sense, doesn't it? The physical things that we can do. Intellectually, creatively, emotionally, and socially. Now, if you take the first letter of all of those segments, it spells the word spices. So basically, if we look after our well-being, it spices up our lives. It's really important for us to be able to do that. So I'm going to set you a little challenge this week. There are 6 segments. Now, if you're able to, what you can do is either write down 6 numbers and pop it in a little box or a cup. And each day this week, just pull out a number and that will allow you to have a think about a way in which you can look after yourselves, top yourselves up emotionally in that particular number. So that almost gives you a week, doesn't it? If it's the family, you can do it together as a family, or you can do it just by yourself. It doesn't really matter. But what I thought we'd do is have a little bit of fun with Audrey. Now, I've got my dice here, and I'm going to roll the dice to Audrey, and we'll have a see between the two of us what we're going to do this week to top ourselves up emotionally. So, Audrey, are you ready for the dice?
I'm ready and waiting.
Okay, fantastic. Here we go then. I'm rolling to you.
Excellent. Got it. Okay, right. I'm going to roll the dice, and I've got a 4.
A 4, right, okay. So Audrey, this week, how are you going to top yourself up emotionally and look after your well-being creatively? Number 4 is creatively.
Creatively, I love this. Well, strangely enough, I have just started a theatre project, and I'm doing it with a local community group, the Dustin Players. We're doing a lockdown version of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, and that's allowing me to get back into the acting side of things and playing a different character, and halfway through I have to dress up as a boy as well, so that's been getting me creative with makeup, and so it's a lot of fun, and I'm meeting new people and learning new things because I'm watching them perform, and I'm getting that inspiration as well. So that's what I'm going to be doing creatively. I love this. This is a great exercise.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Okay. So my turn now. So you're going to roll the dice back to me?
Back to you. Yep. Coming up right now.
Fabulous. Well, I've got 2, the number 2. Number 2 is physically. So this week, how am I going to top myself up emotionally, look after my well-being in the segment of physical? Well, again, that's fairly easy for me because I am a bit more of an active type person. I need active activities to help my well-being. If you follow any of my social media channels, you will know that I look after my well-being a lot through physical exercise. So I'm going to be doing a couple of online HIIT sessions this week, get the old exercise and endorphins released through doing some exercise. So thanks very much for that, Audrey. I really challenge you guys this week to think around the nurturing wheel and have a think about how you are going to look after yourselves, either physically, intellectually, creatively, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. So Audrey, back to you.
Thanks, Sharon. I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to keep a dice with me, and I will be using that exercise. It's a fabulous one. And what's really nice about it is we tend to get stuck in one way of doing things. And so this gives us the opportunity to try something new. Now, one thing that you said that's really important here is the fact that we do have these preferences. You're very active. I'm also quite active. And then that means I sometimes struggle with the more spiritual side of things because I find it difficult to find that time to sit down and really meditate. So I've got a little activity here that anyone can do, but it's a little bit more active than sitting and simply meditating or breathing. But it may work as a gateway into being able to do that. And this is simply called the Zentangle. The Zentangle is just drawing a rectangle. It doesn't even need to be a really good rectangle. But you then just draw inside the box whatever you want. And it doesn't need to be brilliant or beautiful. You might do squiggles, you might do lines, you might do great big shapes. And as you can see, the picture just starts forming. It's absolutely unique to you. And with this, it's quite easy to start getting lost in the moment and start just filling in all of those lines. And for me, rather than colouring it in, although you could colour it in afterwards, this is a good way to actually channel my energy and then relax into doing something a little bit more spiritual, just to get you more in touch with breathing, with pressing pause, and actually being able to have a chance to reflect and refocus. So that's the Zentangle exercise. And now it's back to Sharon for exercise 2.
Thanks, Audrey. I love that because I tried one of those mindfulness colouring books once, and I got quite frustrated with it actually because of, sort of like that sort of colouring in the lines and stuff like that. So that exercise that you have just demonstrated there reminds me a little bit of doodling, sort of. I'm quite a doodler. If I'm listening to something, I will doodle. So yeah, that's great. I love the spin on that. Thanks so much. So exercise number 2. Now, what I know that I've shared with you a lot during we've been broadcasting on the show is how we use our personal power. Now, remember, just a sort of a quick reminder, our personal power is our inner strength to get our needs met and make choices in our lives. Now, one of the areas that we have our personal power is, of course, the way we view how we look after ourselves, and we can use our personal power both positively or negatively. But the point is, if we wait for somebody else to meet our needs around well-being, well, we might be disappointed, and we certainly might be waiting for a really long time. So we owe it to ourselves to look after ourselves. And it's a good way of using our personal power by doing something to top ourselves up emotionally, top up our emotional tank, and also build our resilience at the same time. So you're going to need a pen and a piece of paper for this next exercise, because I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and I want you to reflect on them and write them down. So here we go. How well do you look after your own needs, and how often? I want you to do this exercise with me. What do you do right now to look after your well-being? Every day or once a week? Write it down. What do you do for yourself right now, every day or once a week to look after your well-being? Now, the next question is, what could you do? Or what could I do? Or what would I like to do every day or once per week to look after my well-being and top up my resilience? So that's the second question. What could I do, or what would I like to do every day or once per week? Now, the next question is a really important question, so I really need you to reflect on that. What's stopping me? What's getting in the way of me looking after myself? And that might be practical difficulties, it might be negative thoughts, it could be a whole range of things, but write it down. What's stopping me? Interesting. And notice if you're using should words. We need to get rid of those should words. The next question is, what can I do to remove those obstacles? What can I do, or what could I do to remove those obstacles? And write down what you could do. And then the final question is, what will I do from today to use my personal power positively and top up my emotional tank and look after my needs? So reflect on those questions, write them down. So what do I do for myself now? What could I do, or what would I like to do? What's stopping me? What's getting in the way? What can I do to remove those obstacles? And the fifth question was, what will I do from today to use my personal power positively to top up my emotional tank and look after my own needs? So remember, when we use our personal power and top up our emotional tank, we are a better parent, we are a better colleague, we are a better partner, and we're better able to meet those demands of everyday life and be the best version of ourselves. So back to you, Audrey, for your take on this exercise.
Thank you for that. That's a really good life audit. And I think life audits are so important because it just gives us that moment to stop and think about, where am I? Where am I going? Because otherwise we get onto this treadmill and we just keep running and we end up somewhere that we weren't really expecting to be. And so I think that's a great way of just taking a moment, but actively. And that's brilliant. I love that. I'm going to have a look at helping you with doing Sharon's exercise, because sometimes it can be that we feel a little bit overwhelmed and we can't actually remember, oh, I can't think about what I want to do for myself because I don't feel that great about myself. So I'm going to remind you, first of all, what's great about you, and you will find Sharon's exercise so much more powerful and so much easier to do once you're feeling really good about yourself. So I'm going to look at your life wins, and this is divided into 3 different areas, and then there's a section for some goals. And that is exactly where you can really start thinking about Sharon's exercise, the goals bit. The life wins chart is, what are some life wins, things that you've done really well from the age of 0 to 12? And if you need to put in there, I learned to walk, that's a great thing. That took effort, that took practice, so pop that in there. But maybe you did something like winning an art competition or a poetry contest. That's lovely to put in there. Then what did you celebrate as a teen? What successes did you have then? Is that when you learned to ride a bike? Is that when you learned a new skill? So think about those. And life wins can also include, I met my best friend as a teenager. Those things too. And then, of course, think a little bit more recently. What recently has happened that you've felt positive about, that you've been able to do? So again, write that life win in there. And then you move on to your goals. What other ways are you going to keep seeking and keep aiming for those successes? And whilst you are doing that, always remember, exactly as Sharon says, to keep topping up your energy tank using whatever preference, whether it's for soothing, whether it's for energizing, but to keep yourself going and keep yourself achieving. Now, with that, I'm also going to set you a challenge. And this is what I'd like you to do. When you're thinking about yourself, and this is also going to motivate you, I want you to ask somebody. That's the challenge. Ask somebody, what word or statement describes me? What word or statement describes me? Your second question, what am I good at? This is asking somebody else, what am I good at? Because they may say something that you hadn't realized. And this is a fun one, this last question. What person do I remind you of? Who do I remind you of? And this might be a fictional character, it might be somebody that has inspired you, it might be a friend, but why? What are those qualities? And just a little cheeky one here for Sharon. It's, what word or statement would I say reminds me of Sharon? I would definitely say talented. Talented. Because if you do look at Sharon's Instagram page, she does so much and so many different things. I watch a lot of her fitness stuff and I look at it and go, oh my goodness, I wish I could do that. But that inspires me. And what's she good at? She's good at making us feel really, really good. I'm very, very proud to consider myself her friend because she's always encouraging. And that's one of the most important things that we can do for our friends is encourage and support. And the person she reminds me of, this may seem a little bit strange, but bear with me because it's one of my idols, one of my inspirations, and that's Dolly Parton, not necessarily for the physical, but what I love about Dolly is that she's been through a lot of things, but she constantly turns her hand to something new. It doesn't matter what she's doing, she makes a success of it and she's determined. But with that, she always gives back. And those are the qualities that I would say are really, really important and what I love about working with Sharon and having Sharon in my friendship group. So now it is time to think about how else we can relax and energize. And it's over to Kirsty's homeschool where she's chatting with Rosie about what makes them feel good. Over to you, Kirsty.
Hello, Audrey. Lovely to see you again. So this week we're looking at the self-care in us, and Rosie and I have had a really good discussion about this, and I'm going to immediately hand over to her for her to tell you the ways that she likes to take time for herself, and even as her mum I found this fascinating. So off you go, Rosie. What are the things that you like to do to take time
I like wearing my unicorn blanket and it's really fluffy and I like hugging myself.
Yeah? Brings you comfort, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What are the other things that you like to do?
I like pretending like being a bat with this.
You like to pretend to be a bat with that? No, like, so what other things will you do to take some time out for yourself?
Take showers.
You like to take a shower, don't you?
Bath.
Yeah.
I can swim it.
And yeah, you like to go in the bath as well, don't you?
Yeah.
There have been times actually where Rosie's asked me to run her a bath and she will want it quite dark and I have to put little lights in there so she can actually just lay down and chill, and that's lovely, you know, the fact that she already knows that that is one way that she can take time out for herself, and then, you know, everyone in the house respects that. Myself, I know Audrey's been talking to you all about the yin and yang of self-care. I tend to do both. My yin is very much face masks, taking a nice shower or a nice hot bath, you know, really listening to natural sounds, really taking some time for me. And then my yang is, I will actually, when I find things are getting too much, I will actually put myself upstairs, and I've just started doing some online courses, some diplomas, and I'm finding that this actually helps me take a step back from everything that's going on and allows me to do something more energizing. And I actually come back after doing a couple of modules, you know, as and when I can. When I send in those assignments at the end, it makes me feel brilliant. And then I'll come back and I am totally re-energized. So my yin and yang very much runs that way. I think actually we could say the same for Rosie. I think you yin and yang as well. Rosie is actually really energetic and has learnt to ride a bike and roller skate within a few days.
Bike.
And actually, you know, when she's getting agitated and needing some time for herself, she'll often either say, "Mum, can I get my bike out?" or "Can I put my skates on?" So I think that's her way of doing her yang, is to go out and do something energetic.
Mummy, then I'm going fishing tomorrow.
You're going fishing tomorrow. Okay then, so we all hope you have a really good week and enjoy the rest of the show, and we'll see you later, Audrey.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Kirsty and Rosie. And what I love about that little segment is Rosie wearing, I think it was a dinosaur outfit, and she just gives herself a hug. I love that. If you think back to that calm kit, that well-being kit, sometimes having something soft and tactile can really make us feel good as well. So thank you so much for that. And that is all we've got time for. So it's now back to Sharon for our cool down.
Thanks, Audrey. And I do love seeing Kirsty's homeschool. It's such a fabulous little snippet of home life, isn't it? So it's really great. So time for our cool down. Now, it's an important part of our well-being to get a good night's sleep. When we sleep well, we're able to take on more information, we're able to process the day better, and we're able to well, interact with people. You know, our sleep also affects our mood as well. So it's really important to set yourself a routine for the evening so that your brain starts to recognize that it's at that time, that preparation ready for sleep. Now, that routine can include many things like a relaxing bath, or listening to a meditation, or going to bed at a regular time. But what I'm going to share with you are my 3 tips that you might be able to include in that routine, but my 3 top tips for a good night's sleep. Now, tip number 1 is switching off any activity with your phone a good hour before bedtime. So actively disengage from social media, from WhatsApp conversations, and that will help your brain to stop continuing to be stimulated by those things. And it will also help to release a drug called melatonin in the brain, which tells us that we are feeling sleepy. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is avoid any foods or any drinks that are stimulants. So things like coffee, alcohol, sugary foods, they all keep us awake at night. They all stop those good sleep patterns. And tip number 3 is before you go to bed, include in your routine writing down anything that you want to remember to do the next day. A to-do list or setting yourself some intentions or some goals for the next day can really help to calm and clear the mind, ready for a good night's sleep. And I certainly also keep a pad beside my bed, just in case after I've written down my intentions for the next day that I've forgotten something, and then I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking, oh, I must remember to do that. So if I keep a pad beside my bed, I will write that down, and then I won't forget it the next morning. So have a think about my top tips and put yourself together, either using those or some other things, so that you've got a good sleep routine. It's essential for your well-being. But I think that's all we've got time for, really, isn't it, Audrey, today?
It is. And I love your tip about the pad by the bed, because if I wake up in the middle of the night and open my smartphone, I start scrolling, scanning, doing things, whereas if it's a pad and paper, I can write it down and go back to sleep again.
Yeah, and it really does work, it really works.
Yeah, totally. Yes, you are right. We are at the end of another show. So before we leave you, I will hand you over to Reverend Mandy Marriott of the Dustin Parish, who this week is looking at pressing pause and how that helps us accentuate the positive. Have a compassionate week, whether you're energizing or relaxing, and let us know how you get on. Bye for now.
Bye.
Hello again. I wonder, are you a creature of habit? I know I am. But recently, in these weeks of lockdown, I have begun to change my routine just a little bit. For example, I might in a morning make an extra cup of tea, as I'm not having to scramble out of the house in a hurry. Or I might just sit and gaze out of the window and watch the little wren as it perches on the rose bush, or watch the bees as they gather around the plants on my patio. As the old poem written by W.H. Davis reminds us, we need to take time to really notice the things around us. His poem opens with these words: "What is this life if full of care? We have no time to stand and stare." Well, let me tell you a story today which might help us to consider altering our focus. One day, a professor entered the classroom and asked his students to prepare for an examination, a surprise test. They all waited anxiously at their desks for the exam to begin. The professor handed out the exam papers with the text facing down, as usual. Once he'd handed all the papers out, he asked the students to turn over the papers. To everyone's surprise, there were no questions on the paper, just a black dot in the centre of the page. The professor, seeing the expression on everyone's faces, told them the following: "I want you to write about what you see on the paper." The students were very confused, but they got on with the task. At the end of the class, the professor took back all the exam papers and started reading each one of them aloud to his students. All of them, without exception, defined the black dot, trying to explain its position in the centre of the page. And after all the papers had been read, the classroom was silent, and the professor began to explain. "I'm not going to grade you on this," he said, "but I wanted just to give you something to think about. No one wrote about the white part of the paper. You all wrote about the black dot. Everyone focused on the dot. And you know, the same thing happens in our lives. We so often insist on focusing only on the black dot, the health issues that bother us, the lack of money, or the complicated relationships that we are involved in. The dark spots are very small compared to everything else that we have in our lives. But they are the ones that pollute our minds. So, take your eyes away from the black dots. Enjoy all the blessings that you have been given, every moment life gives you. You know, the professor's words echo very much those words from Scripture, from Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honourable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. So what can you think about today that lifts your heart and mind? How does the song go? You've got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between. Well, have a very positive day. Bye for now.